Monogatari is weird. It's not weird as in the plot and the characters don't make sense, but the first episode shows a half-vampire catching a weightless girl in his arms after she slips on a banana peel. Oh, and they're both in high school, of course. It's like anime weird, and that's mostly a good thing, until it becomes a really, really bad thing. If you have clicked on this video, it probably means that you have watched or read Monogatari before, and you might even be aware of the controversy that surrounds it. But if you've never interacted with the series before, you might not know what the hell I'm talking about, so maybe you should go watch the first episode. But if you choose to stay, I want to tell you why you should or shouldn't watch Monogatari, because ultimately only you can decide. I personally tend to avoid recommending or even admitting that I like Monogatari to people, because I truly believe that it contributes to a problematic culture that many consumers of Japanese media are aware of. You see, Monogatari utilizes the infamous anime tropes of lolicon, non-con, and sexualized women/girls in general. There are multiple reasons it does this, which I will go further into later in the video, but there is no doubt that it is not a child-friendly series, or even an ethical one if you want to call it that. I want to make this video not to excuse Monogatari or claim that it is not that bad, but I like to view media with a critical eye, and I want to understand why certain tropes and visuals are used, even when they're problematic. Actually, especially when they're problematic. So, in this video, I'll discuss Monogatari, why I like it, and why I often find it disgusting. Because yes, you can't do both, you can enjoy and criticize the media you consume, and you really don't have to excuse the problematic aspects. But first, a little bit of Monogatari history and literary context. Monogatari is a popular Japanese light novel series written by Nishio Isin. It was later adapted into an anime series by Studio Shaft and a manga series illustrated by Ito Ogure. The plot centers Araragi Koyomi, a half-vampire who is in his third year of high school, and the various girls that he finds himself entangled with, mostly by helping them solve their supernatural problems. He interacts with apparitions, deities, ghosts, beasts, spirits, and other creatures of the occult. The girls he meets become an integral part of the story, and each Monogatari storyline serves one of them. If you have consumed Monogatari in any form, then you probably know that its narrative is not told in chronological order, but through multiple timelines, and it is separated in distinct storylines. The first part of the series, titled Bakemonogatari, employs sort of in media res, I guess, because the high school student Araragi helping the fallen girl I mentioned earlier, named Senjugahara, is not the real beginning of the story, but an important event that has a domino effect on his life. The story is unconventional, and there is no clear way to describe what it is about. I would personally describe it as a mystery that uses supernatural horror as symbolism for human nature. The plot is not very important, in my opinion, in Monogatari, and you're more focused on the characters and their paranormal struggles. These struggles actually stem from human experiences, of course, and it's not a show meant for children at all. You definitely need to pay attention to detail if you want to comprehend it. Even though the light novel series and the animated adaptation are obviously interconnected, I will specifically focus on the anime's portrayal of the Monogatari stories and characters. I want to start off by explaining why I personally enjoy the Monogatari anime, because believe it or not, I was actually a bit hesitant to continue watching due to its early harem elements. Like, I just saw a poster of a male protagonist surrounded by girls, and then multiple girls getting introduced into the storyline, and I got very suspicious. But don't worry, I will get into the more problematic aspects of the show in the second part of the video. First, I want to share the redeeming qualities that convinced me to give it a chance, even though it looked like a show I wouldn't typically enjoy. Number 1. I love the unconventional animation and direction. So, Monogatari is characterized by single color backgrounds popping into frame at seemingly random times, abrupt aspect ratio changes, the use of heavy shadows and lighting effects, body close-ups, and particularly close-ups of the eyes and the head. And what I particularly enjoy about the body close-ups is that in one scene they might have a more comedic effect, they appear to be more quirky, but in other scenes they might actually be more psychologically scary, or they might just cause a bit of suspense. It's really enjoyable to watch. All of these fun elements can be attributed to Akiyuki Shimbo and his artistic liberty. He is the director and creator of the Monogatari anime, and in my opinion, the way he uses animation, it feels like the animation is not a medium through which the story is told, but the art, the visuals, are the story. They just represent the story just by looking at them. Now, granted, what I'm saying might sound obvious or silly to people who are more knowledgeable about art than me, but it was one of the first anime that I saw having that artistic style, so it was incredible, at least in my eyes. For example, it took me a while to realize that the single color backgrounds I mentioned earlier are often supposed to be Araragi blinking, and that might even tell us something about his mental state. So the red one in particular is supposed to represent Araragi experiencing an intense emotion. That bit of information made me want to rewatch the entire show because it added a context that made it exciting. Every panel in Monogatari has both beauty and purpose, no matter how silly or purposeless it looks like. Number 2. The music is also great, and not just because it's enjoyable to listen to. See, every character has a theme tune, or multiple theme tunes. That is not surprising, especially in the world of anime. However, Monogatari is like a mystery that subverts your expectations and uses symbolism, so the music itself can give you clues about a character's true nature or what they're meant to symbolize. For example, I thoroughly enjoy Kaiki's theme tune, which is not surprising because his theme tune is one of the most amazing ones on the show. That theme tune initially evokes fear and intrigue, and he's kind of a villain, he's supposed to be a villain, but the more you listen to it, you realize that the theme tune is kind of silly. At least after a while, to me, it felt like it was played by kids' instrument toys, and spoiler alert, that is because Kaiki initially gets introduced as a powerful, evil person or villain, but in reality, he is sort of a pathetic conman that tricks children to get their money. His entire character storyline is revealed by listening to the theme tune alone, which I find fascinating. Number 3, moving on to the dialogue. The show is actually known for its witty humor and meta-humor and really good dialogue in general. A lot of episodes are mostly conversational and would be boring if the dialogue wasn't good, but thankfully, of course, it is. In terms of the meta-humor, the characters regularly break the fourth wall, but it is done so seamlessly that it often feels like a genuine joke the character would make. For instance, Sensugahara in one episode imitates Araragi's voice to tease him and then says that she can imitate him so well because she has a great voice actress. Now, while there is a typical example of meta humor, Sensugahara's character is meant to be sarcastic and kind of smart-arsey, like she does have this type of humor and she makes references to pop culture as well, so it is something her character would say and joke about. Another thing you might need to pay close attention to in the Monogatari dialogue are hidden key pieces of information about the character, as well as foreshadowing for the plot that's to come. Finally, I cannot not mention how popular Monogatari is for its very witty wordplay, and obviously the only ones who can fully enjoy and understand that wordplay are people who are fluent in Japanese. So I'm personally not gonna talk too much about it because clearly I'm not fluent in Japanese, but I wanted to mention it, and sometimes I can enjoy it too through translation. Sometimes you have to pause though and read the explanation in the subtitles, which, you have to be really dedicated to do that, so I don't blame anyone who doesn't. Number 4. The Monogatari characters are definitely its strongest suit and the charm of the entire show. See, on the surface, they represent typical anime-manga character tropes. Araragi is introduced as a typical high schooler in anime. He is introverted, he does not have that many friends, and he is a pervert, supposedly, who likes to peek at girls' underwear. Sensugahara is described as a tsundere yandere kundere, a cold and cynical girl that is actually soft on the inside, and she also bullies the protagonist Araragi, but also secretly loves him. It is a running joke that her characterization is so inconsistent with those typical, mean girl tropes in anime. Another character, Tsubasa, is the class representative, and like many class reps in anime, she's represented as the innocent girl next door who is beautiful and, wears glasses, I don't know. But here comes the twist. Monogatari subverts these tropes by using their stereotypical traits to symbolize the characters' hardships, and they also use meta-humor to unravel their true personalities as the story moves along. So, by the end of each storyline, these characters are no longer identifiable by these tropes, but by their own unique characterization. I cannot stress enough how wonderfully Nishio Isin has constructed these characters. Each and every one of them reminds you of something about yourself or that you have experienced in someone else, and they are beautifully developed. Although there are flaws that need to be talked about in terms of characterization, I would dare to say that it's one of the very few animes that doesn't leave any character underdeveloped, especially for an anime that has so many female characters. Number 5. As I said earlier, Monogatari explores supernatural elements, and there is a lot of wacky things that occurred within the story, but they often symbolize human experiences and struggles. The storylines explore relatable social issues and personal identities that are not typically put under the microscope in popular anime. Of course, no piece of media can portray these issues perfectly, and Monogatari does have flaws, but I believe that it does it better than most, at least. And believe me, the bar is on the floor. I'm not saying that Monogatari is the perfect representation for all of these issues. I will now list off some examples. So, first of all, Senjoku character was assayed by a cult member, and the consequences this event had on her life and mentality are carefully examined during her storyline. Hanekawa experiences maladaptive detachment from people and her own emotions due to familial trauma, which is also explored by her storyline and supernatural struggle. Kambaru is a canon lesbian, and her love for other girls is portrayed as natural and has similar conflicts to any other romance storyline. Unfortunately, Kambaru does fall victim to unsavory stereotypes about queer women, and I'm not a big fan of that, and it's not an amazing portrayal of a queer character, but I believe the show is never embarrassed of her sexuality and it embraces it fully, at least when it comes to her interactions with women. The problem with Kambaru is not her interaction with women, but it's her interaction with Araragi, the male protagonist, and how she often, I guess, sexualizes herself in front of him. I don't know, it's not a great portrayal, but, at least I appreciate her romantic storylines. I just want to point out that if you do feel offended by her character, I completely get it and your feelings are so validated. This is only my personal perspective of the character, and obviously I'm not the judge of the universe. In fact, I was just about to get into the bad aspects of Monogatari, so I know that this show does a lot of things wrong. As I just said, I will now discuss the biggest issue I have with the franchise, and specifically the anime, because the visual aspect of the show compared to the light novel plays a big part in this flaw. You see, Monogatari sexualizes its female characters, whose ages range from 8 to 18 years old. Well, technically you also have Killshot, who is over 500 years old, but you get the point, and we've all heard that argument before. Now, this is nothing new in the world of anime and even in the world of international broadcast media, but since I praised so many aspects of the show and confirmed, at least according to me, that its writing is masterful, cheap fan service might sound out of place and not something the show needed. So, why does Monogatari do this? In my opinion, there are two main reasons. Reason number 1. It's probably easy non-spate. Japan's otaku culture recognizes loli content as something marketable and profitable. They have no problem manufacturing and advertising such content. From what I understand, the Mono series is promoted to an adult audience who is aware and is part of the otaku cultures in Japan, because that's the culture the series tries to subvert. The loli and other such naughty tropes that the series admittedly tries to subvert are unfortunately integral to the culture, so there's a high likelihood the viewers will still enjoy it. And trust me, I've seen what the Mono fandom talks about online. They either find lolis funny or hot, or just both, which is equally degenerate. But even if they just find them funny, I will never excuse something just because it's considered a joke. Our humor says a lot about our mentality and boundaries. For example, one of the gags Monogatari uses a lot is Araragi SAN the elementary school student Hachikuji. I know, horrible. It's not as horrible as it sounds, but still, the concept on its own is just the ickiest and most awful thing ever. So, although she fights back and Araragi is not actually getting pleasure from it, it's still detestable and it normalizes the behavior because Araragi never actually gets reprimanded or punished, which is wild, considering that his parents are police officers. Another reason this is disturbing is the fact that child SA is one of the most common types of SA in Japan and has seen a record high rate in the latest years. There is a misconception often held by people that Japan has very low rates of child SA, but that couldn't be more wrong. Studies I have referenced in the description have spoken about the problematic underreporting of SA in Japan and how child SA is not lower, but comparable or even higher to international rates. I'm not saying Japan is like the country of SA, but it definitely is not innocent. Most countries, they have really high rates of SA that are not talked about or addressed enough. This is because the child SA rates discussed in Japan often disregard non-penetrative SA, which is just as traumatizing and serious. To be clear, penetrative SA includes rape, let's just say like that, while non-penetrative SA includes literally everything else, such as inappropriate touching, exposing, etc. So, child SA in Japan is a very real but mishandled issue. So no, it does not matter that it's a joke, and that it should be hypothetically be obvious that Araragi is in the wrong. The gag is still criticizable, unacceptable, and cheap. In my opinion, it significantly reduces the quality of the show. Reason number 2. I believe that I have established how much I disapprove of the sexualized girls trope in anime, but I cannot just ignore the fact that Monogatari has another reason for using it. There is something separating Mono from other gross harem ecchi anime, and it's not simply the better writing. Mono is different because the sexualization is used in a literary symbolism context. Now, before I elaborate, this does not mean that I excuse it or enjoy it. I believe that there are better ways to explore such symbolism and not through inherently harmful tropes such as lolis. But as I said, I want to understand why the creators chose to do this, even if I disagree with it. So, how does Monogatari use superficial sexuality for symbolism? Let's look at some examples. The first example includes a certain shower scene between two of the main girls, Hanekawa and Senju Gahara, that could definitely be considered a clear-cut example of fan service. And it is, kinda. Even though the animators definitely had fun with it, there is more to this scene than just two girls taking a shower. Senju Gahara and Hanekawa interact with each other on a deeper level by showering. Hanekawa is insecure and focuses too much on her limitations, which are metaphorically exposed by her being completely naked, especially where Senju Gahara can see her. This allows Gahara to understand her better, and it also shows Hanekawa that Gahara is willing to let her in and become her friend. Now, why is this important? These girls are very central to the Mono world, as they are both in love with the main character, yet they are not written as rivals at all. Araragi has no intention to be with Hanekawa after falling for Senju Gahara, which means that the love triangle only serves for the development of Hanekawa's character. The shower scene crystallizes this, as it shows that Gahara has no intention to be Hanekawa's enemy, and it foreshadows Hanekawa's eventual love for Senju Gahara as a friend. So, even though the scene is fan-servicey, I can't help but appreciate everything it does for the characters in only a few minutes. I also can't help but think that if it was directed differently, it wouldn't be so fan-servicey, because women showering with each other is not something completely uncommon, and there's definitely a lot more intimacy in female friendships. But yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's not fan-servicey, because it definitely is. A second example that I'm not as fond of is the infamous toothbrush scene between Araragi and his sister. And yes, I did just say sister, I'm really sorry. I just wish the gimmick of Araragi finding his sister attractive didn't exist. Now obviously it's another common anime trope like the little sister complex, unfortunately. And to be honest, it's not like Monogatari endorses it, the series always makes fun of it by showing how weird Araragi is for making such jokes, and he is usually punished by his other sister for such gross comments. But anyway, such scenes are still depicted and they make for a very painful watch. I actually almost dropped Monogatari after that scene. The only reason I didn't drop it is because I understood that the toothbrush scene was more than just paraphilic fan service. Thanks to several strangers on the internet who analyzed it for me, it actually is meant to be an allegory of sorts, showcasing Araragi's connection to his sister and acceptance of who she is. Very platonically, of course. The reason this scene is so painful to watch is because accepting your close family can be just as uncomfortable. You love them, but you don't always like or understand them. You have to experience the uncomfortable sides of your loved ones in order to fully accept them as your flesh and blood. But of course, Mono had to approach that topic in the most yucky way possible. I am not an art critic, and I will never tell an artist how to do their job. Nevertheless, I will say that the Mono creators often use these anime tropes to subvert them and symbolize the human experience, but fail to criticize them. If you are a viewer that knows that lolis and the little sister complex is gross, then it's fine, you do not get any illicit pleasure out of it, you just get a very painful watch. But if you are into these paraphilias, Mono has just served them to you on a plate, and it doesn't matter that it makes fun of you, you still get that illicit pleasure out of them. And I personally find it very frustrating that it does this, because if you look at the Mono fandom, a lot of it is just, in my opinion, degenerate people who make jokes about children or lolis or anything like that. And of course, I don't want to single out the Monogatari fandom here. Every anime's fandom includes people like this. Just look at the degenerates who are going to the Studio Ghibli theme park and just do unspeakable things to the statues of the children characters. The difference is that the Studio Ghibli characters were never designed to look sexualized, it's just people enforcing their paraphilias onto them. Monogatari, on the other hand, is often complicit to what is going on. And for that reason, I will never consider Monogatari one of the greatest anime of all time, even though it could have been in another universe, I guess. There are many reasons why people enjoy anime, regardless of its genre or intended audience. Monogatari is incredibly popular, especially in Japan, and saying that it's all loli related would be undermining Nishio Isin's writing and Akiyuki Shimbo's artistic talent. While I have interacted with people who enjoy Mono for the same reasons as me, I have also witnessed the trolls and loli lovers who will shamelessly declare their love for such content. This is what navigating online fandoms is like, and we're a long way from changing that. What I want to emphasize is the benefit of using critical thinking when consuming content that is considered problematic. Everybody has problematic faves, from The Office US to Monogatari. But not everyone will recognize why they are problematic. Ignoring the harm done by certain types of content in favor of entertainment is what leads to the normalization of said harm, even if we don't realize it. If you personally would never watch Monogatari due to its problematic content, I completely support you. I would never suggest that you do. If you do want to watch Monogatari because you are curious about its story and art, then you should be able to do it. However, if you believe that Monogatari has no flaws and loli content should be accepted as part of anime culture, then I suggest you research into the impact these opinions can have. If you have clicked and watched this video, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This took ages to put together as I am very busy and obviously I work full time. I do have a TikTok account. This is where I initially started posting anime content, and my most watched video was about loli content. So that account has been privatized for a while, but I might open it up again to promote this video, and hopefully it will reach a wider audience. You might notice that this video, the Monogatari one, is actually also on my TikTok, like a shorter version, a lot shorter version of it. So you can watch that as well. I just wanted to expand on the opinions I expressed in the TikTok video a bit more. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.